I always thought that my wife and my best friend were two people I could rely on in any situation. But one day I discovered that they were both secretly communicating with each other behind my back. This is something I didn't even expect from these two. My wife was cheating on me with my best friend, and I found out about it at the most unexpected moment. Kirill and Anna had been married for 4 years. When they met, the man was taking his first steps in entrepreneurship, and in a couple of years, he was able to achieve significant results. That's when they got married. Anna was very happy. She believed that everything would work out for this young, promising businessman, and he would be able to take good care of her. Anna's cherished dream was never to work again, but simply to live for pleasure. She saw this opportunity in her marriage to Kirill. At first it was really like that. But then her husband's business stalled, leaving him not only without money, but also with a pile of debts. After a long argument, the woman had to look for a job. She got a job as an administrator in a beauty parlor and worked there in shifts with another girl. The salary was not the most attractive, but 3 or 4 working days a week suited Anna. She wasn't going to look for a better place. His wife sincerely believed that such a state of affairs only stimulates the spouse to earn and achieve more in life. But Kirill himself did not succumb to such stimulation. After the failure of his business, he felt burned out. But in order to at least slowly pay off his debts and begin to think about the next step, he decided to take a job in his specialty in a small office. Since this was his first steps in his specialty, the first stages didn't pay much. After paying all the bills and loans, by the end of the month, there was almost nothing left. Again and again, his wife rebuked him for insolvency, but his husband only tactfully kept silent in response. When these problems first started, Anna turned her attention to her husband's best friend. Denis, unlike Kirill, was luckier. Having chosen a different sphere, he has not gone wrong, and now he could live the high life. At first, Anna looked at him warily when his friend came to visit them. And then, secretly from her husband, she began to correspond with him in social networks. After several face-to-face meetings under a far-fetched pretext, the woman became bolder. She was already openly flirting with Denis. His financial success and lifestyle turned her on more and more. And the man, despite his long friendship with Kirill, succumbed to her charms. And for months they had been having an affair behind his back. Of course, Anna really wanted to leave her negligent husband as soon as possible and go to Denis. But she understood that in that case all his debts would be divided in half after the divorce, and she did not want to pay them off. She wanted to live off her husband, but not to take on these obligations. In her head, she had it all planned out. Soon all her debts would be paid. She would go to Denis, and they would not get married and live together in his luxurious apartment. Anne believed that it could not be any other way, so she only waited for this moment. Sometimes, when she had a day off and her husband went to work, Denis would come to their house. Anna would wait with bated breath at the window when her lover's beautiful car drove up to the house, and then she would meet him in a translucent robe. One day, lying together on his mate's marital bed, Denis suggested that Anna travel together to another city, where they could rest in peace and not hide from anyone. The woman agreed with great joy. She immediately began to think of some plausible story for her husband that he would not suspect anything. A couple of days later, over dinner, she told Kirill that she was going on a refresher course to qualify for a higher salary, and in the future even to try for the position of salon manager. Mo was very happy to hear this. Finally, his wife would stop nagging him for his salary and instead address the issues on her end. That night, Anna couldn't sleep for a long time. She was hot and cold, and she could not get comfortable. Her husband even reprimanded her in his sleep, as he himself could not get a good night's sleep because of her. The woman was excited about her imminent trip to vacation with her lover, but at the same time, she was disturbed by a bad feeling. On the day of departure, Cyril left late for work, and her spouse decided to sleep a little longer on her day off. Toward 12 o'clock, she awoke. She ate breakfast and began to pack her suitcase. Dennis picked her up a couple of hours later. The drive took a little longer than they had planned. Kirill constantly texted Anna on Messenger asking, "Is everything okay?" It had been a long time since they separated, and the man was worried about how his wife was doing. When Anna got tired of his annoyance, she said she would text when she checked into the hotel. For safety reasons, her husband asked her to send the name of the hotel. When they arrived at the location, Anna became lazy to write the long name of the hotel, which in addition was not written in the most legible italics, so she just took a picture of the building with that hard-to-read name and sent it to her husband. Several days passed. Kirill came home late one night, but was very pleased with himself. Today he had passed the final stage of the interview and was being hired by another company, where the salary was almost twice as much. All the man thought about was how happy his wife would be to know that she wouldn't have to jump over her head. In principle, if she wanted to quit the salon, she could do it in peace. He decided to call her and tell her the happy news. Besides, they hadn't talked in a long time. Mostly just correspondence, and even that seldom. Her spouse complained that they were given so much new information, and she did not have time to memorize everything to show the intermediate results. Anna did not pick up the phone twice. The time was late. The day must have been hard again, and her husband wrote off her absence as the fact that his wife had probably already gone to bed. Anna was indeed in bed at that time, but not asleep. The next day, she woke up with Dennis around 10 a.m. Her whole body was pleasantly aching from the night's physical exertion. The woman got up and stretched herself sweetly. By the bed, there was a whole tray with breakfast, a variety of fruits, cakes, and drinks. Anna dreamed of this kind of life. An expensive hotel, breakfast in bed, and a successful man by her side. Both took their time getting ready, closing the room, and going downstairs. They were going to go downtown, take a walk and visit a couple of places. Anna asked her lover to wait for her for a while. She wanted to go up to the receptionist and find out how she could get into their spa and what treatments they provided. While the cute girl behind the counter was explaining everything in detail, Dennis looked around. He got bored and decided to take selfies in these chic interiors. He posted the photo to his page on the net and immediately forgot about it. At that moment, Kirill was sitting at work. A few things remained to be done at his old job, and he would calmly move on to another place. Over lunch, he decided to browse his social networking feed and began to see what his friends were sharing. Among the piles of faceless pictures, he came across a photo of Dennis. His friend smiled, checked, "I like it," and went on reading. But something made him come back to this publication. In the background, he saw a painfully familiar logo with a strange italics. He immediately opened the photo of the hotel, which his wife had sent him, and he compared it with the publication of his friend. The names were identical. It certainly couldn't have been a mere coincidence. In that second, he realized everything. The sudden departure, the unwillingness to talk on the phone, those pictures. The whole time his wife wasn't on a course. She was out partying with his best friend. All the next night he couldn't sleep. The man gathered up all of his wife's belongings and put them on the doorstep. Forgiveness was out of the question. When Anna returned home, she didn't understand at first why she couldn't open the apartment with her key. But then her husband arrived and pointed her to all her packed belongings. He told her that he and Dennis knew everything and now he was filing for divorce. The unfaithful spouse wasn't even upset. After such a well-spent vacation, she was sure that Dennis would definitely help her with her debts after the divorce. But it turned out to be much easier. She called her lover, told him everything, and solemnly declared that now they could not hide and live together. While on the other end of the phone, Dennis was silent. Anna asked him to call her a cab to his house. She was now completely free for him. And then Dennis stunned her. He did not really intend to develop this relationship. He just wanted to relax. And Anna turned out to be a very convenient option for that. He said that he was not going to move her in and hung up after that. The woman stood there in shock for another 20 minutes. It seemed like her whole world began to crumble. Then she finally called for a car and drove back to her parents, like a battered dog. Their relationship was strained, but she didn't see many other options. After the divorce, her husband's loans were indeed divided equally. Anna was not able to get away with it. She had to take on more work hours. The woman had a long way to go to deal with the consequences of his despicable adultery. Second story. I always thought that my wife and I had a strong trust and love for each other. I couldn't even imagine that someday something would happen that would change my whole life. But one day, I found out that my wife was cheating on me. Roman and Hope were married when they were both young, when they were both in college. An excellent Nadia was always very combative and determined. Probably this attracted Roman, who was given everything hard. And sometimes, under the weight of these problems, which constantly one after another appeared on his way, the man began to lose heart. At one point, Roman believed himself to be unlucky. He could not work long in one place. He was always unlucky with work. In this, his wife was the exact opposite of him. She was calculating. When she realized that she had reached the ceiling in one company and no more growth awaited her, she left for a more promising place. This piercing character she inherited from her mother. The man was even sometimes afraid of his mother-in-law. And then one day, the situation got out of hand. The husband had no luck with his next job. He was cheated of money. Roman was already tired of such gifts of fate. Another trip put by her so ill-timed, for a couple of weeks, completely knocked him out of the glue. The man was very upset and decided to take a break from the eternal race for normal work. Hope, on the other hand, was the opposite. At the new place, she was just getting into the swing of things. She never rebuked her husband, his failures with work. Rather, she simply turned a blind eye to them. But her attitude to everything that was going on manifested itself differently. She simply did not take her husband's opinion into account in some matters. If she had to buy something, she did not ask him about anything or consult with him. She said she had earned it and could afford to buy it. Sometimes it seemed to her husband that they lived separately from each other, and his wife did not suffer from this fact at all. Unemployed and depressed, Roman decided to meet his close friend Alexander one day. They had known each other since high school. Sashka always knew how to support him. He really appreciated this quality in his comrade. That evening, Roma shared with him his worries about his marriage. He was hurt that his wife wants so much and does not put him in anything. Romka, she had to give birth and go on maternity leave. Only for that time, you have to become a breadwinner. Take everything into your own hands. See how she sings then, you'll start to solve everything, said his friend, taking a sip from his drink and smirking. The man thought hard, and indeed all his acquaintances, whose wives had recently given birth, had never complained that their opinion was not taken into account. And having a child with Nadia was really a good idea. They had been married for a long time. It was time to put some thought into it. He had not brought it up before because he was not sure he could cope with the role of sole breadwinner. But now he was determined that he could achieve everything. He just had to take matters into his own hands. That same evening, he decided to talk to his wife about it. But she said she was at the peak of her career, and about children, she will think later. Roman really didn't like her tone. She sounded like she was getting him as an unintelligent kid, and he decided that since she allowed herself such behavior, he would go for the trick. Nadia always carried with her in her purse a small container of various pills that her doctor had prescribed for her. There were essential vitamins that she took during the day, but most importantly hormonal pills that allowed her not to think about having children. One evening, when his wife had already fallen asleep, Roman took out this container and swapped these pills for simple vitamins. He was awfully pleased with his resourcefulness. Every week, he repeated this procedure with the replacement of the pills. Now all he had to do was wait. In the meantime, the man began to actively go on job interviews. He prepared himself for the role of the sole breadwinner in the family. Finally, he found a job with good conditions. He was especially pleased to be officially registered, because he did not want to step on the same rake as the last time. Gradually, his situation became more stable. At last, he felt confident about the future. But strange things began to happen to his wife. Her husband had become accustomed to the fact that she usually came home late. She always took on a little more than was necessary at work, but usually she came back in good spirits, and now her mood was beginning to resemble a roller coaster. She could be joyful, but within 5 minutes she was already angry. At the same time, she lost all interest in intimacy with her husband. That's what upset the man. At this rate, they wouldn't have a baby anytime soon. Time passed. One evening when her husband was returning home from his shift, he saw an unfamiliar expensive car parked near their front door. Behind the wheel was a respectable man of about 45 years of age. He was talking on the phone, and when he saw Roman, he followed him to the door with his gaze. When his husband entered the apartment, he did not understand anything at first. There were packages everywhere. At the entrance to the bedroom was a large red suitcase, with which he and his wife had gone on a long vacation abroad. Roman thought his wife had decided to do a general cleaning, but then Nadia spoke up from the kitchen. Still in disarray, her husband went there. His wife asked him to sit across from her and then calmly said, "Why did you switch my pills? You wanted to force me into labor." Roman did not expect such a direct question and sat silent for a couple of seconds. Then he answered after all, "I told you it's time we thought about kids, not just your job." He muttered to himself with a tray. "Congratulations, you did it. Only the baby isn't yours. I'm not raising it with such a worthless husband," she said coldly. "I'm leaving for Peter. I've already packed my things. For now, you can live here, but we'll share the apartment." Nadia was already up and caught and was about to leave, but Roman grabbed her by the arm and hissed, "Is that your ex-boss? So you've been cheating on me all this time?" The wife broke free and headed calmly for the exit. Roman couldn't believe what was happening right now. Even though Nadia had left her last job, she had decided to bring her lover with her. Of course, because he was much richer and more successful than him. And Roman himself, wanting to do better for himself, in fact, only encouraged her to choose sooner in favor of this very Peter. He already wanted to take out his anger on the woman, but the very man in the expensive car appeared on the doorstep. The lover realized what the enraged husband could do and rushed to the rescue. Roman restrained himself and at parting only swore at both of them. The spouses divorced, dividing the apartment. They left a lot of money in Roman's hands, and he bought an easier apartment. Nadia moved in with Pyotr. They married and had a son. With a new man, she felt safe. Roman, on the other hand, was still angry about the whole situation and himself for a long time. Now he did not even look at career women. He was looking for a simple, kind girl who would appreciate him for his human qualities. He understood that only if he found his equal would he not constantly be worried and jealous of his woman. So that's the story. Share in the comments what you think about this situation and the behavior of the characters.